Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Garrett Smith, the nutrition detective around these here YouTube parts. And this is the 82nd Love Your Liver live stream. And welcome to everyone who is here today. We have a fun topic today. We're going to go over gallbladders and some concepts about gallbladders and why they go bad and what people can do generally when they're gone, because we're supposed to have them. It's kind of like where medicine thought appendixes were just totally unnecessary, and they didn't realize that they're kind of like a little storage room for gut bacteria. And that's why it's tucked away like it is so if things in nature were to destroy your gut biome, you have something to reseed it. Think of it as like a seed bank. So they thought that it meant nothing because modern medicine understands very little about the gut biome. And so they just said, you don't need it. It doesn't do anything, right? So gallbladders, they're just like, yeah, we'll just take it out. It's bad, right? I mean, if it's really bad, you got to get it taken out. You can't leave dead things in the body like root canals. Remember, your mouth is the only place they'll leave dead tissue in you as a root canal. Dead tooth, dead everything underneath it. So, not a fan of root canals. But anyway, so for those who are here, if you want to help this, for those of you who know what we're trying to do and you enjoy this, if you want to share this, make sure to like this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're in the chat, go out of the chat if you can, X out of the chat and go like the video, and more people will see it. And if you're watching this later, make sure to like it and subscribe, and then also leave a comment. The comment can be as short as you'd like. It could be an emoji, as some of you are doing, or some of you are doing great comments. Like I love the one that was just a W. I thought that was cool. So, here we go. Gallbladders. And then we'll get to some subscriber Q&A. So super chats are enabled. If you really want your question answered first, you can do a super chat, and that'll pop you up to the top of the list. And the gallbladder topic that we're doing today was a request from someone, and it's obviously related to toxic bile. Pretty much, it's the toxic bile storehouse, and so somebody requested it, and I decided to do that today. And then we'll also go over. People were wanting me to discuss poop. For those of you who are squeamish about poop, I mean, in naturopathic medical school and in naturopathic medicine in general, we are the doctors who talk about poop. I remember in school, I had a teacher who told me that he was a weird guy, but he said that for a while he had his front office staff, when they would answer the phone, they'd be like, "Hi, this is the doctor's office. How you pooping?" And I thought that was hilarious, because it is important, but I wouldn't really want my front desk staff to be having to talk to everybody about poop. That's just not my thing. But if you don't look at your poop or pee, this is the reality, folks. You know what you put in your cake hole, right? You know what you put up here. But if you don't watch what comes out, I mean, because you don't know what's going on inside, right? We can't see that. You can try to feel it, but we're not even very good at feeling our insides. Just imagine if you felt everything that happens on your insides all day long. I mean, people can't even stand it. You feel palpitations, right? And those freak you out, because normally you're not supposed to feel your heart beating. Really good digestion means you don't notice your digestion at all. You don't feel anything as the food's going through you. So if you ate and you didn't stuff yourself, you shouldn't feel that full. You could feel satisfied, right? And then you shouldn't be feeling bloating or distension or, have tons of gas. I mean, gas is normal to have some, but like a good digestion is you eat and you poop and you don't notice anything in between. So we don't really have, a lot of feedback from our insides, right? You're not supposed to really think about your breathing. Your breathing should just happen. Heartbeats should just happen. Digestion should just happen. If it's healthy, you don't notice it. That's the goal. So if you notice a lot of these things, something's not right. And then the only way you can really assess what happened to the food you put in versus what is coming out is to look and observe your poop and your pee. This is just the way it is, right? It's like black box theory. If you don't know what black box theory, this is an amazing concept to use. Black box. So you have a black box, right? And no, this is not like the black box of the conspiracy world. We're talking black box theory is the idea that you put something into the box and you don't know what happens inside the box. Like inside our bodies, like people think they know what's going on, but obviously with the state of health today, they don't know what the hell's going on inside of there, or they'd have a lot more solutions, right? So let's just say the black box, you don't know what goes on inside of there. So you put an input in the box and you get an output out of the box. You put food in and you get to see what comes out, poop and pee, and you may not know what's going on inside of there very well at all. People today obviously have totally wrong concepts of what is going on in there, and that's why they keep getting worse. So black box theory is you watch what goes in and you watch what comes out. An example of this would be, let's say I have somebody who I do the tests on them. I run the blood test and the hair test, and it says they're low zinc. Okay. Their labs say they're low zinc, but they try taking zinc supplements or high zinc foods like red meat, and they feel worse. What do we do then? What is going on inside the black box? We don't know. It doesn't make sense. Do we keep pushing zinc though? Do we ignore what the black box, the output is saying the person doesn't feel good? Okay, so that's confusing. But what do? Do we keep inputting zinc when the output is bad? That would be dumb. What I've seen with this, for those of you out there, is if you do the detox right, even though you have low zinc on your tests, if you do the detox right, at some point people become able to take zinc and they feel better with zinc and they need more. But pushing it too early is the dumbest thing you could do. They're too toxic to have the zinc in there. The zinc is causing more problems than it's solving. So anyway, that's an idea of the black box. So poop and pee is your output. I mean, other than how you feel, right? We got how we feel, symptoms, and we've got poop and pee to watch. I mean, for the people who have done the detox, right, where they start to notice their bed sheets turning yellow, what are they putting out in their sweat? It's yellow sweat. What color? What's one of the main colors of bile? Yellow. What's one of the main colors of vitamin A? Yellow. Bitter things, especially in the herbal world, like berberine, toxic as heck, tend to be yellow. Have you ever noticed this? Yellow things are bitter in general. What are they sweating out? Toxins. So if you could observe this, you know they're pushing out a lot of toxins through their skin. It's kind of the way it is. A lot of skin conditions, if you really get down and look at them, are yellow. What is coming out of their skin? Toxic stuff. So let's get into the gallbladder. We're just going to hit concepts today. Why would a gallbladder go bad? Well, what is the gallbladder's purpose, in my opinion? Okay, obviously we're not going by conventional theories because they just take out gallbladders. They don't fix gallbladders. They just take them out. When in doubt, cut it out. That's their approach. So the gallbladder is a holding tank for your bile, for your toxic bile. Remember, the bile is by definition the most concentrated toxic fluid in your body. Your liver takes toxic stuff and either just puts it in the bile directly, or it does some biotransformation of it, what people think is detox. But remember, stuff going through the liver that it hasn't left you yet hasn't detoxed yet, right? It's only once it leaves you that it's truly been detoxed. Many things, as they go through the liver in the process of what we call biotransformation, actually become more toxic. This is the most confusing thing to people. People go, why are we designed this way? I'm not the designer. Only God understands why this process happens. But as an example, alcohol, ethanol. You drink alcohol, it's not the ethanol that causes your hangovers or could kill you. It's the acetaldehyde that it turns into in your liver going through ADH, alcohol dehydrogenase. So ethanol goes through alcohol dehydrogenase. It turns into acetaldehyde. That's what can kill you from alcohol poisoning. It's not the ethanol. Okay. Vitamin A starts out in plants as beta carotene. And then either you turn it into retinaldehyde, aldehydes are not good, or you eat retinal esters in foods. Remember, retinol, you're not eating straight retinol in foods, you're eating retinal esters. Animals store vitamin A as retinal esters. So you eat retinal esters, and then your body can cut off the fatty acid and turn it into a retinol. So, and retinaldehyde can turn into retinol and they can go back and forth too. Anyway, it goes retinol, retinaldehyde, retinoic acids, which is the same compounds as somebody might take in Accutane or Retin-A or alitretinoin, which is a chemotherapy form of retinoic acid. And these things are highly, highly toxic. We went over that, I think, either last week or the week before about Retin-A and the studies on veterans where they had to stop the study early because too many of them were dying, applying it to their face and absorbing it into their system. Pretty toxic stuff. So I have not heard of people, beta carotene. I don't want to say it's not toxic because I've got research on it being very, very toxic. Well, not very, very. I'll say toxic. I've got research on it being toxic, but vitamin A gets more toxic as it goes through the biotransformation system. It doesn't become less toxic. So until that is out of you, it's not detox. So the whole idea of the detoxification pathway is a little shaky, because things actually can become more toxic and do more damage to you as they detox. It's only once they're out. So your body is taking these biotransformed things that are either along a spectrum of less toxic to more toxic and putting them into your bile. If that bile leaks into your blood, which is what we talk about here in toxic bile theory, it goes to your kidneys and those things damage your kidneys. And if it comes out your skin because the liver and the kidneys are not managing their jobs well enough, because the more toxic you are, the worse you are at detox. So that's why really toxic people, if you're out there really pushing things hard and you're making yourself feel worse, you're too toxic to push it that hard yet. Slow down. When I manage people, when I'm managing my clients, those of you who are working with me directly and come to office hours where people get to chat with me weekly at group sessions for up to 6 months with each package. Nobody else does this because this process is not a joke, or as we say, this is not a game. Those of you out there who are doing this and making yourself feel worse, you may not have any idea what you're doing. You may be getting impatient, or even the word might be greedy in terms of pushing things too hard. And if you're feeling worse, you're doing something wrong, which is usually pushing too hard. It's usually pushing too hard. It's people being impatient. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they just think, I'll just suffer through it. I'm tough. I can make it. No, remember, you're here because you felt like crap. You're here because you couldn't handle how you felt. Your toxic bile getting into your blood is why you feel like crap. So are you going to go and make it so you have more in there by pushing too hard? Don't do that. Don't. So anyway, the gallbladder. It's a storage tank for toxic bile, the most toxic fluid in your system. What happens when toxic bile is too toxic and it goes, and it can damage the liver cells that make it. It can damage the bile ducts, the little ones in the liver. It can damage the big bile ducts. It can eat holes in these things. It is the cause of your leaky gut if you feel like you have leaky gut. Got studies on that, been over them before. If bile goes back up into your stomach, that's what causes ulcers. Your stomach is designed for stomach acid, folks. It's not the stomach acid that's eating holes in your stomach and causing you ulcers. It's bile. Okay. Bile is so toxic, it eats holes in things. So, even though the gallbladder is designed to hold this toxic nastiness, it can eventually break down. Makes sense, right? So this toxic bile could make it so your gallbladder doesn't squeeze and contract like it should. So they see that kind of like paralysis of your gallbladder when they do these analyses, right? They give you contrast and it goes into your bile. And funny thing that they put the contrast and it goes into your bile almost like it's toxic, right? So they put it in there and they get to see if your gallbladder is actually contracting right. And it may not be. Your gallbladder may be necrotic, like actually dying. And then what's there? So what happens? So why do we have a gallbladder? Let's go into that. Why do we have a gallbladder? It's to hold this is my theory. It is to hold the bile, to collect the bile. Because think of it as your liver slowly, like all day long, your liver's making a trickle of bile. Like if you had your bathtub faucet was dripping, right? And you push in the plug, you plug the bath, and the drips will slowly accumulate. Maybe a sink would be a better idea because it's just not so big. Because a bathtub would take forever to fill up, right? But so you've got a sink, you put the plug in, and you have the drip from the sink, and it will eventually fill up the sink. And it could overflow, right? But we're not talking about that. So the sink slowly fills up. Think of the sink as your gallbladder. So your liver's making the drip of bile all day long, and your gallbladder is there to hold it and collect it. That's what it does. Why would it do this? Well, if you think about when we eat, especially back before we had food in refrigerators and all this stuff, before we had food around us all day long, we were eating, maybe once, maybe twice in a day, right? So your liver made the bile went into the gallbladder holds it until you eat. So it then squeezes, releases all this bile into the food. Now, why does it do this? Multiple reasons. One is, yes, there is the fat absorption, emulsification part of bile. So when you have to remember, other than the last, I love the joke about Joe in one of Joe Rogan's shows where he says he looks at the pictures of people in like the late 1800s and that stuff, and he would say they just always looked hungry. They were all super thin, generally. They were not super thin, but they were definitely thin, and they all just looked grumpy and hungry. People not being hungry all the time in the Western countries is a relatively new thing. So people used to eat like once or twice a day. They dump all their bile at that time. The soluble fiber triggered the bile dump. The fat triggered the bile dump. Whatever else they were eating in there, bitter things, whether it's, vegetables or other things that are, most people don't realize vegetables are generally bitter, which is a marker of toxicity. I mean, think of bitter, they call them bitter greens, right? Greens are bitter. Greens are like some of the most toxic things you could eat. Why would we eat leaves anyway? There's no energy in them. What a waste of time and energy to eat greens. There's like no calories and they're just toxic. I mean, that's why kids reject them all the time. So anyway, you dump bile. So it helps with any fat you eat, right, to absorb it. But I want you to think about this. If you dump that toxic bile out into an empty intestine, right, because it comes out in your small intestine right after the stomach. The bile ducts empty into the small intestine right after the stomach. If you dump that bile and there's nothing there for it to mix with, like food, like a meal, there's nothing there. Let's say that happened. Like when people, let's say, have too much coffee in the morning and they haven't eaten and then they get diarrhea, which is from too much bile in their guts. So, this is not a useful approach. Don't do that. Don't think that coffee's going to fix your bile problem. It's not. So anyway, you dump a bunch of toxic bile right onto your intestines. Think of the toxic bile as like hot lava. It's going to damage everything it touches. If it's just the bile, you guys remember those Pepto-Bismol commercials where they'd show like the picture of the guy from the side where he'd drink the Pepto-Bismol and it would coat the whole like esophagus, the stomach, and then it would go into the intestines, right? So think of the bile going into the intestines like that. It's just coating your intestines with nothing there to buffer it. It's just going to eat holes everywhere. That's a bad idea. So now imagine if you ate food, so you got a whole meal coming down there, or you had soluble fiber in there, which can soak up bile, or let's say you even had charcoal in there, which could soak up bile. And you eat that, and then you have this, I call it, this is my term, the food poop, right? Because you ate food, you want it for the food, but you also want to poop it out. So it's kind of like at any stage of your digestion, right? I call it the food poop. Because, you know, it's both. It's food, you want the nutrients out of it, and it's poop, you want to get rid of it. Kind of like the bile. The bile has purposes in the body, but you want to get rid of it. It's not one or the other. So when you eat, right, imagine this. The bile could just coat your intestines if there's no food. But if there's food there, it mixes with the food. So I mean, this is not a fun visual, but just imagine. So you got instead of the bile just coating the outside of the intestine, if you have a meal in there, the bile is now distributed all through the food poop. So less of it is touching your intestines. Does that make sense? It's diluted. The bile is effectively diluted. And so it will do less damage. So if your body had this toxic substance that it needs to get rid of, this is the whole idea of the toxic bile. Like it is the cause, that fixing your toxic bile problems is the cause of your problems. But the toxic bile itself getting rid of it is the solution to your problems. But the toxic bile itself is the cause of your problems. This is why it's not a game. If you push things too hard, that toxic bile damages everything it touches. It's already damaging you. That's why you're sick. See? So what's it going to eventually do? So we want to dump it with food. That's the most effective. Let's go over a quick thing about fasting. Some of you have fasted before. Some of you have fasted long enough that all of a sudden everything went to, no pun intended here, everything went to shit. Like all of a sudden, what your body did was your body dumped a bunch of bile that it had been storing up. Like think about it, right? You don't eat for 2, 3, 5, 7 days. Your liver is still making bile. Where's it going? You're not dumping it. There's no reason to dump it. Sometimes people dump it in the middle of fasting. That could be from stress. That could be from all sorts of things. Could be if you're still exercising during fasting. And all of a sudden you dump a bunch of bile into an empty intestine. And this can be why some people have such fasting disasters. Why do people feel better during fasting? They're not dumping the bile. It's sitting in their gallbladder, or their liver has slowed down production of it. And so they're not leaking bile into their bloodstream, right? If the bile is not exiting the liver as much, or if it's sitting in the gallbladder accumulating, it's not going into your blood. And people go, my brain is so clear. I feel so amazing. My skin symptoms went away. My digestion is so much better. My stomach stopped hurting. All that was the bile. Do you understand? You just stopped dumping it. It didn't go anywhere. It's still there. Okay? This is why people can feel so amazing on fasting. And then what happens? They tell you to eat a very light meal when you're done fasting. Why are you supposed to eat very light to get back into eating? Because you have a giant gallbladder full of bile. And if you go and you eat a big old fatty meal, you're going to dump all of that bile. And you're going to feel awful. But then what do most people say who don't fix their lifestyle, if you want to call it that, or their nutrition after they fast? They go, well, I feel so amazing while I fast, but then I go back to my normal life and then all my stuff just comes right back. Ding, 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 ding. They didn't fix a damn thing. They just started dumping their bile again. And then the bile started leaking into their blood again. See how, when you understand toxic bile theory, it all makes sense. Now, the thing about fasting, though, is think about it. You're not putting in any poisons. That can, if people did that enough and they stopped putting in their poisons all the time, and the things they didn't realize were poisons, and then they felt better over time because they had more days accumulated where they put in zero toxins. Does that make sense? So they don't dump bile for a couple days, but they're also not putting in toxins. And they can oxidize some of the bile acids and oxidize some of the vitamin A, and they can oxidize some of the toxins along the way. So might it move people further forward in certain ways? Yes. Yes. Underweight people, fasting, not a great idea. Overweight people, well, you got fat to burn. So if you want to, I'm not against fasting. I'm not against it. I just want people to understand what it's actually doing. So, the gallbladder going bad, toxic bile. Now we understand what the gallbladder does. So now let's go over what happens. So gallstones. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on gallstones. What happens? Well, so the word cholestasis. Bile is chola, C-H-O-L-E, chola is bile. Stasis means stagnation or sitting still, or potentially even going the wrong way. Cholestasis, bile stagnation. So where is the first place the bile would tend to stagnate? The gallbladder. It's a holding tank. Stagnation. It's almost like designed for stagnation in a way because it's a holding tank, right? So once you have that removed, gallstones. When you look at a let's say a creek, if you think of the bile as like a creek or a little stream, and you watch the phenomenons that happen in a stream, right, where you get slow areas, you get like a deep area, and it's stagnant there. What starts happening there? Things grow, like algae, right? You start seeing things grow, and you might even see, depending upon the water, even when we're talking about like really hard water, you might see things start to calcify. Stagnation, movement helps stop. Movement is the opposite of stagnation. So movement helps flush things, right? That's what we do to pipes and other things. We flush them to clear them out. But if they're stagnant, they start basically in a certain way growing things, whether it's growing like living things like algae, or it's growing crystals like calcification. So gallstones are basically a symptom of stagnation. It's sitting there too long, or it's not being emptied fully, right? You can get urinary stones in your urinary bladder because things are stagnating. You're not emptying well. There's probably too much calcium in the system. Gosh, what raises calcium in the system? Oh, vitamin A, vitamin D supplements, copper toxicity. They all raise calcification stuff in the system. Processes. So, gallstones are just stagnant bile. Too long, too often. It's too stagnant, and things are growing. So, what happens when your gallbladder is removed? I thought it was funny. Let me just do an aside here. Somebody was saying, I invited on a podcast, and they're like, which topic could you talk straight on for 10 minutes? And I was like, Which topic couldn't I talk straight on for 10 minutes? As I look at the time and it's like it's almost 40 minutes in now. Anyway, or 30 minutes because I started late. What topic could I not talk for 10 straight minutes on? Anyway, so the gallbladder's removed. What does this mean? Well, it means that the bile trickle, the faucet, just runs into the small intestine all day. So there's no collection of bile. This means that the function of bile, the part of it that helps with like breaking down fat and fat absorption, is not going to work as well all at once because there's nothing to hold it. So it can be dumped all at once. So what does this tend to result in? Well, people who have their gallbladders removed often don't tolerate high-fat meals. Do you understand why now? They can't dump enough bile at once to deal with the fat. Not that we should be eating high fat. Humans are not designed for high fat diets. And by high fat, I generally mean added fats, not fats in foods. There's a big difference. I'm not a low fat pusher. I just think that a lot of problems started when we started isolating fats and oils. So then we could just eat tons of fat. We can just add as much fat as we want to food. Well, it's been a disaster since we've started adding fats to things. People say, oh, it's the type of fat. And no, it's just too much damn fat overall. Okay. So gallbladder's gone. You have a trickle of bile coming out of the liver all day. What does this mean? It means that anything you do, it means, well, the bile dumping process has been compromised because you're missing a part of you by design. So what those people should do is generally people who don't have a gallbladder, instead of doing things like one big meal a day or two big meals. Not that I'm advocating one big meal a day. I'm just saying instead of like people with a normal gallbladder who might be able to get away with one meal a day or two meals a day or three meals a day, people without a gallbladder, the more they spread things out, whether that's soluble fiber, whether that's charcoal, whether that's eating, the better off they'll be. Think about it. If you split, just as math, if you split 3 meals, I'm not saying to eat 6 meals a day. I wouldn't do it. But if you have real problems, if you split 3 meals into 6 and it was the same food, right? The same amount of fat, all that stuff, same amount of soluble fiber, whatever. You split it into 6 meals a day instead of 3. There would be less fat coming in at any one time, which means that the trickle of bile could deal with it easier. The soluble fiber could soak, there's only a little bit of bile, so a little bit of soluble fiber can soak it up. Basically, if you don't have a gallbladder, in general, the more you spread things out to match your gallbladder's your liver's bile production only being a trickle, the better you're going to feel. I'm not, you're missing a factory design part. You may have to adjust. Here's the sad thing is, the reality is you don't get to be necessarily normal anymore. You're missing a factory part. You may have to adjust your lifestyle because you can't hold your bile to dump it all at once. So let's go over a quick little thing about, the commonalities of gallbladder problems. Some of you may have heard, here, I'll put the link here. There's a paper called Validating the 5 Fs. Validating the 5 Fs mnemonic for cholelithiasis. That's kidney stones. Time to include family history. This was 2013. So what they did, cholelithiasis, lith is stones, chola is bile, so bile stones, gallstones, stones in the gallbladder. That's what they're saying. So there used to be a thing, the 5 Fs, well, it's still around. These 5 Fs were if a doctor is trying to assess somebody's issues and he's looking at them, the 5 Fs are fair, as in light-skinned, fat, as in overweight, obese, female, fertile, so they're still able to have kids, so they're pre-menopause, and 40. So that means 40 years old or above. So these are the signs that, like, so if a doctor had in front of him a white woman who was obese, who is has premenopausal and 40 years or older, if she's got like pain in her under her right rib cage, or she's got like, if she's can't tolerate fat, she goes and she eats at a restaurant, and she's like, if I eat at a restaurant, gosh, 5 minutes after I finish eating, I've got to get up and run to the bathroom and I have diarrhea. And she can see like the rainbow colors on the top. There's like frothy diarrhea that you can see, like kind of, like on puddles where you can see the rainbow, where you can see kind of like the fatty reflection. That's what happens on roads, right? It's oil on the roads. It rains, oil comes up. You see the rainbows on the puddles. Well, this is the same thing that can happen when people poop a bunch of fat out. You see rainbows, you can see a little bit of them on the top of the water because there's oil floating on the water that they didn't absorb. Okay. So anyway, so of course, in today's woke environment, right, you're not allowed to stereotype people as being, oh my gosh, you're not allowed to say that just because somebody's overweight, they have more of a risk for gallstones. This is terrible. How can you do such a thing? How can you say that women have more gallstones than men? Sexist. This is terrible. Terrible. You cannot use statistics in medicine to look for patterns and to see things that make sense based on research and statistics. You can't do this. This is terrible. That's all a joke. Fair, female, fat, 40, fertile. And they went through in this study and they validated them, all of them except the 40. And then they said, well, the 40 thing didn't seem to match up as much. So what they were going with was familial, as in, if your parents had it or your mom had gallstones, you're probably going to have them too. Okay. How would we pass down gallstones? Nature or nurture? Well, you have the same genetics as your parents, so you're going to have the same weak links in your detox chain, but also nurture. Who teaches you what to eat? What patterns in your diet? Where do you get most of your patterns in your diet from? Probably your parents. And then think about it this way. Are people today generally, compared to their parents, like, we have worse food than our parents did and our grandparents, and especially our great grandparents, right? We just have terrible food now. Totally toxic, less nutrients, all that stuff. So it's going to be more likely that we're going to get more problems because we're more toxic and we have fewer minerals in our food. And then people are just making terrible choices. So why would let's go through those things. The Caucasian part of it, the fair, the white skin, I don't necessarily know why. And in terms of the toxic bile theory, I don't have a particular theory on that. I will tell you that even if you look in the research, red hair is associated. Red hair people have different livers. Here, let me go and show you this. See if I can find it. So I'm not going to dig too deep on this one, but I've seen it before. This was just an article on the NIH. Study finds link between red hair and pain threshold. Okay. So there's difference. Red hair is a unique thing. There's also a weird thing about, like, let's say, and this is just a generalization, but Irish people and alcohol. Irish people, lots of red hair there. And alcohol and the Irish have been known to go together. So there's differences in the livers. And I do tend to think that when there are genetic issues in the liver, people that tends to lead towards an easier addiction to toxic substances, like, let's say, alcohol. I do believe that. So that could be part of the connection between fair. So now we have something that could make sense. Okay. Female. Ladies, you have more estrogen than men. I think estrogen is really one of the most complex things for the liver to break down and detox. Women tend to get more gallstones. Women tend to have more of their gallbladders taken out. Women tend to have issues with eating higher fat. Like women tend to take longer to detox because women are better at making body fat, which goes along with higher estrogen. So women can make more body fat to store more toxins, which means that it's going to take longer to get rid of them. So there's that connection. Fair, female, fat. Well, we just went over that, right? If you haven't seen my video on this channel connecting obesity and vitamin A, which would then also go along with toxic bile theory, I think I did that. Wait, didn't I do that one? Let's just do obesity, serum, bile, PubMed. I think I've done this before. Let me see what we got here. Well, here we have a paper. Exercise training and diet-induced weight loss increase markers of hepatic bile acid synthesis and reduce serum total bile acid concentrations in obese women. I want you to pay attention to that. They lost weight. They started moving their body. So people will hear me talk about exercise being an agitator. It can cause bile dumping, but we still need to exercise. We need to dump bile. And also what they probably did with those women was they started eating less fat than they were before. I'd bet money on it, because the easiest way to reduce your calories, folks, is to simply reduce the amount of fat you take in. That is the easiest place to reduce your total calorie intake. It's undeniable. So these women lost weight. They probably ate less fat and they started exercising, probably not crazy exercising, but their serum bile acids went down. So we can say that they lowered their bile acids in their blood as they lost weight. Okay, so let's keep going with this. So let's see. Let me see. I'm looking at this paper here. Diet-induced obesity and weight loss alter bile acid concentrations and bile acid sensitive gene expression in insulin target tissues of C57BL/6J mice. Okay. Let me see if there's anything useful in this one. No, we hypothesized that bile acid concentrations and related gene expression would be altered in lean, as in low-fat diet fed, LFD, versus diet-induced obese, as in high-fat diet fed, HFD, groups of mice. And that some detected changes would remain after weight loss in an high-fat diet group switched to the low-fat diet group. So here we go. Plasma conjugated bile acids were elevated in the high-fat diet, which were the obese mice, high-fat diet relative to the low-fat diet and SW. What's SW? Oh, the switched animals. So they just said that the switched animals, the animals that switched to the lower fat diet, had lower bile acids in their blood than the high fat diet. Let me get this paper on there. Are you seeing a pattern? I am. Oh, let's see. We got another one here. Increased bile acid synthesis and impaired bile acid transport in human obesity. Let's see. What do we got here? One of the issues with bile acid studies is they only measure a couple of them usually. So depending upon the bile acid recipe, I've talked about this before, the bile acid recipe can change and your problems can change. But here they're talking about bile acid problems. Conclusions: obesity is associated with increased bile acid synthesis. This is why I talk about overtypes. Those of you who are in the network, and I talk about overtypes, and overtypes tend to go with overweight. And I've actually said this before. Now we have proof in the literature. I believe that people who more easily go overweight make more bile in general. This was a theory of mine. And now we have here obesity is associated with increased bile acid synthesis, preferential 12-alpha hydroxylation, and impaired serum bile acid fluctuations. So their bile acid stuff is not working right. And then, since I talk about the gut biome connected to this, we'll just touch on this last paper. A dysregulated bile acid to gut microbiota axis contributes to obesity susceptibility. So when they're talking about your gut biome affecting whether you're overweight or not, or it can affect your tendency towards being overweight, what are your gut bacteria like marinating in all the time? Like bile. Do you get it? Like, if you, as an example, if you don't have enough bile coming out of your bile ducts from your liver into your small intestine, you get SIBO. You get small intestinal bacterial overgrowth because the bile actually can keep down bad bacteria. It's toxic, right? And then there are bacteria that can survive the bile. I think they call them either bile tolerant or bile resistant. And they frolic in the bile. They're like, this is no problem. So the bile regulates your microbiome and the bile regulates your leaky gut, and nobody else out there is talking about this. Here we go. Interpretation of this paper. Our study highlights that dysregulated bile acid signaling mediated by gut microbiota contributes to obesity susceptibility, how easily you can get obese, suggesting modulation of bile acids could be a promising strategy for obesity therapy. How about if we just make the bile less toxic and let the body fix it by doing the right things? There's an idea. So, did I put this one in there? So the thing you got to remember about the bile, so if you have a bad gut biome, the bile goes into your gut, primary bile acids, and then if your gut biome's messed up, then some of those bacteria take those bile acids and turn them into secondary bile acids, which are the most toxic. And then those, if you have leaky gut, like all those alternative people out there are saying, basically like everything's connected to leaky gut, because they're really saying everything's connected to leaky bile. So you absorb those secondary bile acids, they go in, they can cause more cholestasis, which then causes your gut biome to get worse, which then means you make more secondary bile acids and you have this vicious cycle. How do we start fixing it? Well, you put in less toxins and you get the right minerals so that you start doing things right. Like as an example, sun fiber has been shown. Sun fiber is a fiber, a soluble fiber out there that we use in the program. It's been shown to reduce secondary bile acids in the blood. Oh, that's nice, right? I don't remember if I posted the Lancet study, but I'm just posting that there anyway. But don't go and overdo sun fiber. I have very specific directions in the network in the Love Your Liver program about how to start it. And we start it slow. Anything probiotics, you should start slow and see if it's working for you. Don't just take something because I said it or because somebody else said it. And then if you don't feel good on it, don't keep taking it. This should be simple. So, and actually the sun fiber, the study on it showed that there were less secondary bile acids in the blood, which is really good. So anyway, I saw some super chats. Let me get to the, I'll just hit the poop color thing real quick. Okay. We talked last week I remember John posted a thing about when he had COVID, he didn't poop for like 10 days or something, he had real bad constipation for like 10 days, and the poop that did come out was like clay colored, like pale. Okay, that means so what gives your poop the brown color? Bilirubin. Bilirubin. Bile in your poop gives your poop the color, the brown color that you're used to. Okay. What do we see as people are going through their detox in terms of changes in poop color? Well, we tend to see changes associated with the bile. A very common thing early on in the program is people will start to notice their poop looking more yellowish. What is one major color of bile? Yellow. What is the major color of vitamin A? Yellow. What is the major color of bitter, toxic things? Yellow. What is the color of fatty liver? Go look it up. Yellow. They're getting rid of toxic stuff out of their liver through the bile into the poop. Okay. Sometimes we can even see orangish. What's another color of vitamin A, folks? Orange. Okay. Sometimes I can say this from personal experience, even after doing the vitamin A detox for a while, I did one night have like pasta with meat sauce, right? Red sauce. I had tomato sauce. Okay. I never said I was perfect. But the next morning, I pooped red, and it's not blood red. It was tomato red. Like it was the lycopene thing everybody thinks is so healthy, and it's just not. So the colors of vitamin A, if you see those in your poop and you're on a low vitamin A diet, this means your body is probably dumping vitamin A, stored vitamin A, and other yellow, orangish, even red. I mean, if you need to look at your poop and know if you're seeing red in your poop or on the toilet paper. First, you need to make sure it's not blood, because that could be a hemorrhoid or something lower in your intestines, bleeding. So you don't want to disregard it completely. But like for me, I don't eat tomatoes, or I didn't eat tomatoes, and then all of a sudden I ate them, and the next morning my poop is red. Did I assume it was blood? No. But for a second I thought about it, right? It's like when you eat beets. Not that I would ever touch beets anymore. Beets are super high in vitamin A, and I never got along with them. Shocking. But then you might have the magenta poop or the magenta pee of beets, right? Why is your body trying to get rid of it so badly? Right? So there's those colors. Then there's the green poop. We have some theories on this. We don't have proof on this. These are just theories. So green, I don't have the paper right now, and I'm not going to look it up, but bile turns green after it has, in the research, it shows after it has sat in the gallbladder for a while. Okay. Think of it as like, there are people out there saying that green bile is old bile. I don't know that this is true. I don't believe I started saying this. I can't recall when I said it. Other people started saying it, and I just don't know that I have any evidence of that being the case, other than the research that I found where they said that as the bile sat in the gallbladder longer, it turned more green. So that's the only evidence I have in terms of it being older bile. Okay. But we talk a lot about copper toxicity here. Copper, when you think of copper pipes, right, there's that copper color that's kind of like a brass color, right? It's kind of that orangish color. What happens to copper when I call it copper rusting, but it's really just copper oxidizing, so iron when it oxidizes, it rusts, right? It looks reddish, brownish reddish. Okay, that's iron oxidizing. We call it rust. Well, copper does the same thing. Copper oxidizes. So sometimes I'll jokingly call it copper rust, but it turns that turquoise color, a bluish green. What happens when you mix blue, like let's say copper, with the yellow of bile, and you let it sit and oxidize more? Might it turn the bile green, right? We all know yellow plus blue makes green. This should seem plausible. The longer the bile sits, the longer it's oxidizing. You add copper, blue-green to yellow, and you get green. I mean, right? You all mixed paints in elementary school, right? So if you're getting green poop, which is a very common thing, that's bile too. The story of that bile, I'm not sure about, but we have some theories, as I just went over. So, yeah, really pale poop, your bile is going back into your bloodstream and it's not going into your intestines. That would be like cholestasis. Toxic leaky bile is going the wrong way. And that would also go along with constipation. You need bile in your intestines to poop well. So if you're not pooping very well, and by pooping well, I want minimum 1 poop a day. Minimum. In a perfect world, you have no digestive symptoms and you poop once for every significant meal you eat. Because that meal should be moving through your intestines and not bumping into other meals. So you should poop once for every significant meal you eat. Not every snack, but every significant meal you eat. That's perfect digestion. Almost none of us out there have perfect digestion. So don't feel bad if you don't have perfect digestion. But if you're going along with the modern medical thing of if you poop like once every 3 days, you're okay. Oh man, no, that's not okay. You're not. Where do you think that bile that you're making is going? It's not going into your poop or you'd be pooping. Why does coffee help you poop in the morning for those of you who still drink it? Because it helps you dump bile. You drink a cup of coffee and then a little bit later you're in the bathroom pooping. Coffee dumps bile because it's toxic. Toxins can cause you to dump bile. That's why people do bitters. Bitters. Bitter is the mark of poison in nature. Bitter tastes equal poison. So, let me do something here real quick. Okay. Just had to take care of something. Let me find that super chat. It's Ramon, my regular super chatter. Hi, Ramon. Thank you very much for that super chat. He asked, have you thought of doing video clips of your live streams based on the question to kind of give a viewer a 10-minute more or less answer? Thanks. Yeah, me 10 minutes. Yeah. I am talking with somebody who does short video clips. He may chop up some of my videos. We may do short focused clips, like maybe where he asks me a question and I just answer it off the cuff and I try to make it sort of short. But yeah, I am working on that. That's something we need to do because not everyone has the time for these gigantic live streams. So yes, I am talking to somebody about that. Okay. So let's see. Matt, my old buddy, Matt asks, is it possible that increasing magnesium can suppress or cause a zinc deficiency? I'm noticing significant acne outbreaks when I increase my topical magnesium. I don't think so. So Matt, I don't think that's the issue. It's more of just anything we put on our skin. You know, if you have a negative reaction to it, it's just you want to change it. So you could, depending upon what you were doing, if you were doing the magcahol, which I go over in the program, you know, magcahol can, for those of you who know magahol, which is basically a clear alcohol, whether you do vodka or tequila or whatever, a clear alcohol mixed with magnesium chloride, then, you know, you're putting alcohol on your skin. That is toxic, right? I mean, we're only talking about people will freak out. Oh my God, alcohol. And we're talking about like at the most, typically 40, somewhere between 20 to 40 sprays a day out of the normal magnesium oil spray bottles. So we're not talking about, if you've got one of those trigger things, like those big, like, to spray your plants or whatever, that's way more per spray. So I'm talking like the typical like finger pump, like the hairspray pump bottle kind of things. But like 20 to 40 sprays a day, that's not that much alcohol. And some of it's going to evaporate off your skin. But alcohol on your skin may or may not get along with you. Magnesium oil, which is just magnesium and water, may it's a salt, like it is a mineral salt, like sodium chloride is what we call salt, but it's also a mineral salt. So we have magnesium chloride is a mineral salt. If you put it on your skin, and whether or not you can see that your skin is dry, if you have dry skin and you put magnesium chloride on it, then you can get that tingling, burning, itching sensation. Now you can fix that. Somebody told me, I have not tried this myself, but for those of you who want to try it and give me feedback on it, that'd be great, is that if you wet the skin with just normal water prior to putting on the magnesium oil or the magcahol, it can prevent a lot of the tingling, itching, stinging, that stuff. Because what did you do? I just said it was dry skin. You just moistened the skin. And then you put that on, and in theory, the water that you already put on the skin would then dilute the magnesium oil. Then you could get into, if you put on magnesium oil or magcahol or magahol, and you get any of those sensations, you can put regular lotion on top of it, and that will get rid of that. Well, if we put regular lotion on it and it gets rid of the sensation, then we're talking about dry skin again, right? It does not, the tingling or stinging or itching does not mean, that's not an indicator of magnesium deficiency. Almost everybody's magnesium deficient. The sensation on your skin is that you got dry skin, whether you can see it or not. Okay. And can you get used to it? Sure. Could taking magnesium help fix a lot of things in your body? So think about this. If we associate it with dry skin with low thyroid, and then people will say, well, if you take the magnesium long enough, this tingling, stinging, itching, burning sensation will go away. Well, what do we use to bring down high calcium, which is associated with low thyroid? We use magnesium to bring it down. So if the magnesium helped correct the thyroid problem, then you get less dry skin, then you'd have less of a reaction to the magnesium. There's no magic story behind it. It's minerals. Now, the other thing you can do that's kind of cool is if you do a magnesium spray and then you put and you get the tingling or the stinging or the itching, and you put magnesium lotion on top of it. People would think that was going to make it worse. It doesn't make it worse. It gets rid of the sensation. You do it quick. So you'd put on the magnesium spray, and then if those of you who know the tingling, stinging, itching, burning, whatever, it takes like 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes to start really get going. So you got plenty of time. So you just put on some magnesium lotion on top of it, and then you get like a double dose of magnesium, and you get rid of the stinging and tingling and itching and whatever. Okay? But Matt, what I would say is, first of all, don't put topical magnesium on your face. If you're doing that, anyone, you will tend to break out. That's just something that happens with it. Don't put it on your face. The other places that it does really well that we don't tend to break out in would be like the inside of your arms. The forearm, the part of your forearm where you don't grow any hair, the inside of your thighs. People will do the bottom of their feet. I've never seen a zit on the bottom of people's feet. Now, if you're going to do your feet, you got to be very careful, because magnesium oil, which is magnesium in water, is very slippery. So you might want to put it on your feet and then put your feet up on something for a while for it to dry, because you don't want to be putting magnesium oil on your like tile floor or your wood floor, because then somebody else might step on it and slip. You might slip. It's not safe. But if you put socks on right afterwards, the socks are going to soak it up. So you got to like let it soak in. Okay. So anyway, but the acne, just don't do it on your face. That's the first thing with topical magnesium, is just don't do it on your face. You could do it on you could do it up here. You could do it on your neck, but I wouldn't do it on your face. So is it inducing a zinc deficiency? I don't believe so. It's probably just it's probably a local reaction. So whenever if you have any issues with putting magnesium on in certain areas, whether it's the sensation or whether it's a reaction to it, try different areas. That's the first thing. And then you can try some of those other troubleshooting things that I just went over. Okay. So Matt said, I've significantly increased my potassium to address any deficiencies. So now I'm taking a closer look at zinc and its correlation to magnesium. I mean, they're all connected. They're all connected, but I haven't seen this. I think is more of a local problem that we could solve. Let me find, there was one other super chat. Let me get to that one. No. Ramon did another one. He says, I do enjoy the heck out of your 2-hour long live streams. The longer and more controversial, the better. Thank you for everything you do. Well, thank you very much, Ramon. I really appreciate that. I to get this idea out, it takes a lot of talking and logical explanation, and we got to help people understand it, right? So that's just not, people aren't just going to trust me if I come out and say vitamin A is bad and chronic disease is caused by too much toxic bile in your blood and that's leaking there, and they'll just be like, what? I've never heard this before, and you just want me to believe you, and they don't do that. I'm also not trying to create a cult where people just believe me out of the blue because, I don't know, because I'm so good looking and charismatic, you know? I'm trying to prove it and make it make sense. That's the goal. I want people, so just so you know, for those of you who want to invite people here, I'm not after people coming here who just want a magic pill. Like if you got friends and family members who don't do a damn thing for their health, and you think I'm going to, with my knowledge and what we've learned here, that I'm just going to save them by telling them like the magic pill to take, that's not how this works. This is work. We're undoing decades of toxicity. And a lot of, I'll be honest, that this goes for my family too. A lot of the older generations just can't get it through their head that they are toxic as hell. Because when they grew up, the food wasn't that toxic. You know, they never figured out that DDT was associated with the that nerve disease. They never figured that out, that it was the arsenic getting sprayed in the fields and all that stuff, that it was a toxicity. They just can't comprehend it because it wasn't around, you know, and they go, well, the shots, you know, the shots can't be that bad. They weren't that bad when we were kids, and they got like 6 of them compared to like the 70 that the kids are getting today. They just can't comprehend it. We live in a different world. And that's when people are like, but what about these people who lived 100 years ago and they ate liver and well, they never got shots. They never took meds. They never ate glyphosate. They never did all these things that we have done today. Glyphosate came out right around the time I was born. So my entire life, I've been exposed to glyphosate. What has that done? Probably something. Glyphosate slows down vitamin A detox. Weird that vitamin A toxicity keeps getting bigger and bigger, and glyphosate's been out longer and longer. And you can look at glyphosate use. I've shown that graph on one of my tweet threads about how diabetes and glyphosate use have gone up like right together. So, Israel asks, curious about your thoughts on black seed oil. I see it on your Amazon list. Well, it is on my Amazon list. There are things. So what do I think black seed oil is doing? It's not speeding up detox at all. Remember, it's got a lot of odor. It's definitely got a lot of odor. It's got tons of terpenes and terpenoids in it. Let me just go do that. Let me go look. Yeah, bioactivities of black cumin essential oil and its main terpenes from Tunisia. So terpenes, beta carotene, I believe, is a terpene, and then it turns into other thing, obviously it turns into what we call vitamin A. Black seed oil is a very high terpene thing that's been said to cure everything, right? Turpentine is another thing that's been said to cure almost everything. These are really smelly things, very strongly smelling. I think that the way they address things, like the idea behind black seed oil or turpentine or anything that people might choose to use. I didn't advocate any of these. Just so you know, it is on my Amazon list, but I think that black seed oil can be kind of an antidote to things. As far as I know, black seed oil doesn't cure anything. People take it, and if it gets rid of something, they got to keep taking it. That's not a cure. That's a symptom remedy. That's like when people have high blood pressure and they get put on blood pressure meds and it lowers their blood pressure. And if they stop the blood pressure med and they haven't fixed the underlying problem, their blood pressure is just going to go back up and it'll probably be worse than it used to be because the problem festered. Nothing about the actual solution to the problem was dealt with. Okay. But like, I'm not a fan of taking black seed oil internally. It may help some things. Some people out there I know on Twitter, they were like, oh, for breathing stuff, just take black seed oil. And I'm going, okay. Okay. Nobody has a black seed oil deficiency. I did find one study where turpentine taken orally kicked vitamin A out of the liver. It raised serum retinol. So it was kicking vitamin A out of the liver. Could that relieve certain symptoms? Yeah, but in that case study, it actually worsened this lady's like skin stuff. She got tons of skin stuff. It took something, it went into the liver, it kicked stuff out of the liver. How would that stuff have gotten into the blood? Via what? The bile. It comes out the skin. She gets skin problems. So something about black seed oil and potentially turpentine is affecting bile flow. Could be slowing it down. Could be the Nigella sativa bile PubMed. Let's just go look. And remember, we do talk a lot about the duration paradox here, which is where things in very short-term studies that look good, long-term can turn very bad. Let me see. I was looking at this one, and this guy was on. It's a Reddit post, and the guy's wondering if this honeymoon phase was going to end. Like, oh man, that guy's on a bunch of stuff. It's Reddit. The blind leading the blind. Anyway, so the thing I'm gonna back off on that. I think that black seed oil short term can be used as an antidote. I don't think long term it's necessarily. I mean, like I said, nobody has a deficiency in black seed oil or turpentine. So if it's doing something in the body, that means it's either forcing the body to do something it doesn't want to do, or it's making the body do something that it couldn't do. The other thing that can happen though is that black seed oil, being terpenes and terpenoids, could displace, it could kick out, let's say, other terpenoids like beta carotene. So one of the ideas here is that the body's often going to keep things. It like in the liver. The liver is going to store toxic metals, copper, manganese, which causes cholestasis, and zinc. If you don't have zinc in a lot of these slots, the body's going to, if the body's exposed to toxic metals, manganese, copper, these things are going to get stored there. And then you get problems in the liver. So having more zinc in there will prevent these other things from binding. Think of it as the liver is going to be full of something. You can make it good things or you can make it bad things. If you don't have enough good, then you have open slots for the bad things to move in. Think of how neighborhoods go good and bad. You either have good people moving into a neighborhood and taking up the housing slots, or you have not so good people moving into a neighborhood. And then what happens to the entire neighborhood if you have not too many not so good people moving in? The neighborhood goes bad. It's just these examples are the macro versus the micro. It's the same stuff. Your body is going to fill your liver with something. If you don't have good things coming in, then you're going to be exposed to bad things. You go outside, you're exposed to car exhaust. There's cadmium and lead in car exhaust. So you breathe in car exhaust. That goes into your bloodstream, goes to your liver. If you don't have, let's say, zinc in a slot, that cadmium or lead could just move right into that slot. So you can do the other thing too. You can take things to displace other things. Is it possible that the terpenes in black seed oil or turpentine can displace carotenoids or retinoids? It's possible. Anybody out there who's deciding to take action on this theory that I'm putting out there, you're on your own. You are on your own. I am not advising any of this. I am theorizing here. I definitely didn't say to run out and take black seed oil or turpentine. I did not say that at any point. So I'm going to redo the Amazon list here very soon. And that probably won't make it to the next version. But I will say that black seed oil, I'm not advising anyone to do this, but I have said that I will say that I have made a 50-50 mix of what is it? What do they call the turpentine? The spirit. What do they call it? You don't just go buy turpentine at the hardware store. Pure gum spirits of turpentine. So I will say that I had some pure gum spirits of turpentine and I had some organic black seed oil and I mixed them 50-50. And I do really like, I'll just throw this as the one remedy that I used it for: mosquito bites. If you get a mosquito bite, you take a couple of drops of that mixture and you put it on it. And within like 20 to 30 minutes, the mosquito bite will be gone. It's pretty cool. At least that was my experience. So what did it do? Right? What did it do? Did it displace things out of there? Does the mosquito bite somehow bring toxic, is it the mosquitoes putting in, their proboscis or whatever, and they're introducing toxins in there, and are toxins attracted to that? And is that why you get a bump? Right? You don't get a bump after a blood draw. So why is the bump there? What is the toxicity there? Could putting black seed oil and or turpentine topically on it displace the toxicity back into your blood? It's possible. It did something. So that's my thoughts on that. So just checking to make sure that no other super chats snuck in. We're at 9:30 right now. Let me look. Let me see if I got another. Monica asked, "Good morning, Doc. Active Monica here. Can topical vitamin E be toxic since it gets absorbed through the skin? What would you recommend to moisturize dry skin apart from a good diet?" Vitamin E is going to be absorbed through the skin. Absolutely. Absolutely. We got the research in the network where it shows that, when they fed mice vitamin E with vitamin A, when they were on a low vitamin E diet, they stored very little vitamin A in their liver. And when they were on a high vitamin E diet, or when they added vitamin E to the vitamin A diet, the mice stored up to 20 times more vitamin A in their liver. 20 times. This is the idea of shoving things into storage as a way to reduce symptoms. Because you'll find lots of studies out there. People in the vitamin A toxicity world are taking vitamin E because they think it's helping their vitamin A detox. No, it's just shoving it into your liver. And then eventually your liver runs out of storage. And then you have overflow everywhere and you have a disaster. And this is why vitamin E as a supplement in the research is one of the supplements in the research that the media will use to demonize supplements: beta carotene, vitamin A, and vitamin E. Because there has been distinct research linking those supplements to bad health outcomes. Can it help short term? Sure, it can help short term with symptoms, because it's shoving the vitamin A into your liver out of your blood. So you have less vitamin A in your blood. So it's not running around irritating everything. That's how it works. So generally, until my magnesium lotion comes out, do not go and bother Julie about this, but until my magnesium lotion comes out, which will be, I'm quite proud of it. It will be the most potent on the market, but that'll be what I'll recommend. It'll even have a little bit of lactoferrin in it, which will be awesome. Yeah, we're almost done with the formulation, so please don't ask about it. It's not out yet. The formulation is not complete yet. So no, we have no date on it. But we're working on that. And that's very exciting. But you can just find a clean, you're going to be using fats generally on your skin. I am not, dry skin has never been a problem for me. And I'm not a woman, so I didn't get into all the cosmetics and the lotions and I never got into that. Inside the network, I would ask the ladies, especially the ladies inside the network, and do some searches on the network for lotion or whatever, skin moisturizer or that stuff, because they've got way more experience than me. I'm looking into a new approach to some potential dental care stuff and some skincare stuff that I've just started experimenting with last night, and I'm really excited about it. I'll talk about it a little bit in the Inner Circle day. Oh, and Monica, you asked about the Inner Circle. The Inner Circle is only for people who are in the Love Your Liver program. That's where I'm going to go and answer questions for about another hour and a half today. For those of you who have been having trouble signing up inside the network, you go in the home space. There's on the main menu, there's home. Click on home. You're not going to the home page. You're going inside the network. You're going to the home space. It just says home on it. And you go there, and in the featured articles, there's links to the Inner Circle where you should be able to sign up. I know you were having trouble signing up. I had to rearrange some things, but that's where the sign up should be for the Inner Circle. And that's where I answer questions, unlimited number of questions from people who are subscribers. And I do that for about an hour and a half right after this. So I can be a bit more controversial there, talk about subjects that are not suitable or that would be squashed here. So anyway, um, last quick question. Monica said, also, has any patient of yours had pale or loose stool after ingesting activated charcoal from wood? Thanks a million for your amazing work. There's a very important saying that not all practitioners or people out there can wrap their head around, which is anything can cause anything. Anything can cause anything. When, let's say, if so, I have people who, the majority of people, when they take activated charcoal, I like hardwood charcoal. I'm not a fan of coconut charcoal. It's easy enough to get hardwood charcoal. Don't bother with coconut charcoal, at least for people in the US. So, sorry, I got a little itch in my ear. There are people, normally I don't believe that charcoal taken orally induces a bile dump. It soaks up bile, but it doesn't cause a bile dump release. Some people out there tell me that they feel like it dumps a lot of bile for them. That's rare, but it happens. Am I going to tell them that that's not true? No, that for them, that's kind of the wokey thing. That's their experience. No, but if that's it's my experience, right? But if that is how it affects them, that is all that matters. I'm not going to sit there and do the whole normal practitioner of, oh, that can't happen. That absolutely cannot happen. That's I don't know, but maybe you're crazy. That doesn't help anybody, does it? I would say, well, then you can't do it. Or if somebody took charcoal and then their stool got pale, first of all, where did the charcoal go? Because when you take charcoal, your poop goes black, or at least gray, depending upon how diluted it is. But if somebody took charcoal and they got pale stool, what? Like, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm just saying, where did it go? What we have seen with people who are getting along in the detox program is that the charcoal is much less noticeable in the stool. Like when people first start taking charcoal, their stool is very black. And we have some people, myself included, where as we've done the charcoal longer and longer, we're seeing less and less of it color-wise in the stool. I don't know what's going on there. Charcoal should not be absorbed. Where did it go? This is black box theory. We're just like, we put it in. We know what used to happen. Now we put it in. Now something different happens. I don't know. But could these things happen? Absolutely. That pale example, I don't know if you know somebody who had the pale example, but I can't see that. I mean, people with pale stool at all shouldn't be taking charcoal because they're not getting the bile into their intestines. The bile's going back into their blood. Either they're not making much or it's going back into their blood, and that's not the type of person who should be taking charcoal. I have like 16 article series in the network about charcoal, and very clearly I'm like, if you're constipated, you should not be taking charcoal. Now, could it give somebody diarrhea? So if somebody took charcoal and they dumped way more bile than the charcoal could soak up for whatever reason, charcoal causes them to bile dump. Not a common thing, but it can happen. Then they shouldn't do it. They got more bile in their guts. The good news is the bile's going into their guts. That's the good news. They got diarrhea because they had an excess of bile in their guts. The bad news is we don't want to regularly have diarrhea. That's not a solution to anything. Like diarrhea will deplete you more than it helps. So could these things happen? Sure. Are they common? No. Let me give you another example. Vitamin K. Vitamin K2, people MK4, MK7, okay, go ahead. Go argue over minutia is really what it is. Most people, let's say they have sensitive teeth. Vitamin K2 can often help sensitive teeth. I've had probably, I could count them on one hand, 5 people or less who have told me that when they started vitamin K2, their teeth got more sensitive. What happened? What does this mean, Dr. Smith? I don't know. It's black box. It's weird. It's not, it's atypical. So should the people who have the sensitive teeth keep taking the vitamin K? No, stop. Stop. That's not a good sign. Stop taking it. What happened? I don't know. I will probably never know. But we do that. We go by the very complicated treatment algorithm of, doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, then don't do that. I don't care what it is. If somebody has low zinc on their tests and taking zinc makes them feel worse, don't take zinc yet. We'll try to do it through food. I even have people who are sensitive to the amount of zinc in red meat. And we take them to lower meat zinc sources like dark meat chicken, white meat chicken. I even had somebody testing out just egg whites because those are super low. What do? We work around it. This is what I do when I work with people in private. That's where we can, for those of you who are sensitive to things and you don't know what to do, that's what I do when I work with people in private. You're not going to find this information on the internet. Just remember, what you find on the internet is either going to be the majority of people saying, yeah, this is the way it works. This makes us feel good. This makes us feel good. And then you're going to find the one little voice out in the wilderness saying, I tried that and I felt like hot garbage. And then you'll have other people gaslighting them saying, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Right? Because that's what the majority does. They're just like, well, you're not like us. You must have something wrong with you, or you must be lying. Both can happen. We have to honor their experience. No, I'm just but you rare people, you sensitive people, you can have all sorts of crazy responses. And for practitioners or other people to just throw those out the window because it's not typical is why these people don't get help. And that's often why they get help when they come and work in the Love Your Liver program and work with me, because we have tons of sensitive people who will tell them your response was totally valid because I had the same thing. But we also don't want to be like, if you have like 1% of the people react negatively to zinc, you don't want to then say that zinc is bad and then have the 99% people not do it. That's not smart either. Right? We coordinate it to the person, not to the majority. And we don't take the minority and apply their stuff to the majority either. It's amazing, this thing called individualization and giving people the power to say, I tried that. It's not for me. Okay. So I think let me just check and make sure that there were no more super chats. Okay. So let's see. So anyway, we're all, I got all of them. We're all done for today. I got to go do my inner circle with those folks, and hope you all enjoyed it. Remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment and all that stuff. And then we're over at nutritiondetective.com, or the Madness of Modern Nutrition course. You can find it at madnessofmodernnutrition.com, or you can find the Love Your Liver program at members.nutritiondetective.com. And then we'll be back next week. Hope you all come back. See you later. Bye now.